Namaste and Hare Krishna to everyone. Welcome. We're so happy to see everyone this morning, this beautiful, beautiful Saturday morning. I hope you all are doing well. Of course, these are difficult times for everybody, but by coming together and sharing our hearts with each other, hopefully we'll uplift the energy of the world, of the people around us, of our family, and of the communities. My name is Balabhadra Bhattacharya Das. I'm the president of the Vedic Friends Association, who's hosting this event this morning. And I want to begin with a beautiful, beautiful verse from the Srimad Bhagavat Puran. And that is the great literature presented by Srila Vyasa Deva, who heard that information from the great saint Narada Muni, who heard it from Brahma, who heard it from the original sound vibration given by Krishna. So this verse states, Putar Mahadbir Ima Poro Vibur Nimaya Shete Yaramusha Purusha Bunte Gunan So Dasha So the Satmakaha Solang Kristista Bhagavan Vajam Sime. Translation: May the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who enlivens the materially created bodies of the elements by lying down within the universe, and who in his Purusha incarnation causes the living being to be subjected to the 16 divisions of material modes, which are his generator, be pleased to decorate my statements. So I offer that prayer so that whatever we share with you this morning will be blessed by the mercy of the Supreme Creator of all, and that all of us will benefit highly from this. So part of what we do with the Vedic Friends, we call it Tools, Tools, for human empowerment. And our goal is to provide for all of you and for ourselves as well, ideas and concepts that can help us in the pursuit, our individual pursuit of perfection in life. Perfection is difficult, if not impossible, but by having the right understandings, we can achieve greater peace, greater happiness, and be more productive in our lives. So that is our goal, to provide for you the information that can be helpful. And we're so honored today to have a good friend. I call him a good friend. He's like my older brother, I call him, but he's a very special personality. And Anjali's going to introduce him, but I'm just so happy to have Bob with us today. He's a very dear person. So Anjali, please share.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Robert Arnett is the author and photographer of the internationally acclaimed book, India Unveiled, Spirit, Tradition, People, that has won 3 National Book Awards. He is also the author of Finders Keepers, a children's book set in India, illustrated by Smita Turakia, which has won 5 National Book Awards. Both books are each in over 14,000 public school libraries, classrooms, and public libraries in the USA. Arnett has lectured widely throughout North America, including the Smithsonian Institute, the Kennedy Center, Harvard, Yale, and Stanford Universities. He was a speaker at the Parliament of the World's Religions, held in Cape Town, South Africa. He also has given numerous community and corporate presentations. He has been interviewed on National Public Radio, Voice of America, South African Broadcasting Corporation, and various television programs. This talk will be of special interest to youth and young adults. And for more information on Robert Arnett, visit atmapress.com, ATMANPRESS.com. Welcome, Bobji. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. We are so happy to have you here. And I'd like to kick off our conversation this morning by asking you a little bit about your travels to India. And if you could highlight what you found to be the distinctive features of the Indian people when you were there traveling throughout the country.
Oh, sure. I'd love to reply to that one. And it's, for me, very easy. The distinctive feature of Indians were their peacefulness, devotion, and just some innate, I must say, almost genetic spirituality, which I'll come back to that later. But I'd like to illustrate. In fact, most of the things I talk about today, I'd like to illustrate with stories. So the talk today is not about me at all. It's about India, the culture, and the people from their viewpoint is seen through my eyes. But in terms of peacefulness, I was on a bus trip, a tour to one of the most famous pilgrimage sites, certainly in India, probably the world, probably draws more pilgrims than even the Vatican or perhaps even Mecca. And that was to the town of Tirupati in the sacred temple mountain Tirumala nearby. So I'd taken a 4-hour bus trip to get there from Chennai. And when we got there, we're informed as many buses, hundreds of buses of pilgrims. We were informed it was a bus strike that day. And so the buses would not be able to transport us to the mountaintop. You can imagine the disappointment, particularly of the Indians who the temple dedicated to Lord Balaji. It's believed any prayer uttered before that deity image of Lord Balaji will come true. They were just heartbroken. I wasn't too pleased myself either. But anyway, you can imagine the pandemonium you would have had if that had happened in a similar situation in the US. Immediately, the Indian pilgrims knew immediately what to do. And that was what? Pray. Everybody's sitting around. I mean, it looked like a meditation session. And so, in fact, one person I was talking to said he saw this man-made adversity a great spiritual opportunity to show our spiritual resolve to get to the mountaintop. And so I thought, well, I got nothing else to do. I might as well pray with them. So I did. And did my best to go inwardly, meditate deep as I possibly could. And at that moment, the most wonderful peace came over me. I mean, it's indescribable. And I knew that those pilgrims' prayers had been answered. And somehow, just through God's grace, I tapped into the collective devotion of all of those pilgrims. So anyway, I mean, that's in the morning, and they continue very peaceful praying. We had lunch. Shortly after lunch, someone came in and said the strike was settled and the buses are on the way to take us to the mountaintop. I learned a great lesson that day that I hope everyone will keep in mind, and that is prayer is more potent, more powerful than protest, okay? And another story I like to tell on the peacefulness of the people is another bus-related situation. Again, just shows the innate calmness, peacefulness. I was going to the largest religious festival, not only in India, in the world, called the Kumbha Mela. And I was going to one in Prayagraj. We'll talk more about the Kumbha Mela later. But unbeknown to me, I was headed there on the most auspicious day in the last 144 years. When I got there, and it turns out for that auspicious day, 20 million people were there in a 24-hour period. The only reason I bring up number of people is, think in America, any country, it is impossible to transport think if we needed to get 20 million people to Denver, Colorado in a week's time, you couldn't do it. Anyway, I bring that up to explain every available bus was made available to take people to the Kumbha Mela. But those buses, as in America, you have to have interstate permits if you're transporting people from one state to another. Bus I was on didn't have a permit to travel into the state where the Kumbha Mela was being held. So when the bus went into Uttar Pradesh, the state, the police are there, roadblocks, and driver doesn't have a permit, great opportunity to enhance your income a little bit, right? So evidently the police must have asked for too much money, and the bus driver wouldn't pay it. Bus conductor blows the whistle, tells us all get off the bus. We did, because bus couldn't go any further. Anyway, we're sitting there over an hour while the posturing is going on between the bus driver and the police, but everybody's having a great time, talking, buying tea, eating snacks, people buying me food. No one is the least concerned about the bus being held up. How are we going to get to the Kumbha Mela? I dare say if it's the US, everyone would have been on their cell phones to their lawyers. But finally, bus conductor blew his whistle. We got back on. Bus took us to the Kumbha Mela. But so they had reached an accord, the driver and the police. But again, you see stressful situations like this where people are just so calm. It was literally a pleasure to behold. The devotion to the next subject, devotion in India by Western standards is incredible. I mean, especially you go in a temple and you see people just pouring out their devotion to God. And I'm just thinking, if you went into a church or synagogue in America and someone showed that much devotion openly, I can see the congregation. Who does he think he is? That sort of thing. But I'll like to give a few examples of just devotion from everyday occurrences of my own. I was in Kolkata, in fact, and I'd had my luggage repaired. It got damaged, and the luggage repairman and I became good friends, and he one day took me to a friend's home he wanted me to meet, and 2 or 3 room house, basic rudimentary furniture in there, a table, a chair, not much else. And anyway, when I got ready to leave, I noticed a beautiful pottery, beautiful glazed vase on a table. Now I'm gonna apologize to everybody. My first trip to India, I didn't know better. Don't ever admire anything in an Indian home, because it's going to probably be offered to you, whether it's something of insignificance or very expensive. So when I admired it, it turned out his daughter, the host's daughter, had made it. He called her and told her, she offers it to me. And I told her, that's so nice, it's beautiful. I can't possibly accept, because I was traveling around India with a canvas backpack. It's too big, probably get broken. She understood. She left the room. She comes back and clutching in her hand, I took it all, I brought it to show you if it'll show. She brought me a little bouquet of artificial roses, and I breathed a sigh of relief. It didn't weigh much and it was small, but I said to her, oh, that's the perfect gift, and it was. And I said, I'll put it next to my meditation altar and use it for my daily, I didn't say meditation, I used Indian word, puja, formal worship. As soon as I said puja, bam, she's out the door again. Comes back a few minutes later, clutching something in a fist. I thought, what in the world is the girl bringing me now? She understood these artificial roses were going in front of an altar with avatars, images of God, Krishna, Christ as such. And she opened her hand and she had a bottle of perfume, little tiny bottle of perfume, inch and a half high, probably her only bottle of perfume. She profusely sprayed all of those roses with perfume. so they would smell good for God. And even though the fragrance is long faded, I still keep this on my altar today. It's one of my favorite altar pieces. Another story I like to tell, the same luggage repairman asked me would I like to go visit his mother, who lived in a little village up near the border of Bangladesh and north of Kolkata in West Bengal in India. So I said, of course, and I was delighted. And we got up there, and again, a little village, and I was staying in their home, not much privacy in a home that small as you can expect. And one morning I'm combing my hair and she saw me. She spoke no English, no education to speak of, but a wonderful, wonderful lady, a lot of character. I'm combing my hair and she points to the altar where it's a figure of Krishna for me to go comb Krishna's hair. I can tell you I was mortified, petrified, because in Hinduism, there's so many rituals, do's and don'ts. Man, I didn't want to do something wrong at her altar and temple of Krishna, but to make it more challenging for me, guess what? Pottery figure. It didn't have any hair to comb. I didn't know what to do. So, but she keeps pointing. I keep backing up, but finally I couldn't escape the situation. And so I went up to the altar, and I guess God inspired me. I make believe comb the hair, the pottery figure. She smiled and I breathed a big sigh of relief. Anyway, a couple of days later, I was still up there. I was actually laying down in the morning. I guess my mind was calm. All those restless thoughts hadn't come in yet. And I said, that's what she meant. She was teaching me to practice japa yoga, to be a bhakti, to dedicate every act of my life to the Lord. And when I'm combing my hair, think of Krishna, comb Krishna's hair also. So I was thinking about that lady. I mean, she doesn't, to my knowledge, meditate. She probably doesn't need to, probably doesn't have a guru, may not need one at this point. But when she comes onto a formal, when I say spiritual path, guru-disciple relation, I have no doubt she is going to go straight to God. I've heard a monk refer to people like that as shooting stars, and other devotees, well, why does that lady make such quick progress and I don't? They don't see her previous life. She has already learned the basic spiritual principles of life. And once she, gets some scientific meditation techniques, practices a yoga path, I have no doubt she will get liberated very, very quickly. I stopped and bought some very, very nice, several boxes of sweets as a little gift to give to the lady, again, my luggage repairman's mother. And I was there during the Lakshmi festival, Lakshmi Puja. The little kids come around all the houses at night, and the parents give them treats. I noticed she gave away every one of those nice sweets that I brought to her, to the little children. To my dismay, I didn't even get to taste them myself. But that's just how, unselfish she was. I probably was one of the few foreigners to ever been to this little Sala, is the name of the village, West Bengal. And you can imagine I created quite a stir with the children. And her next door neighbor had a little boy about 8 or 9 who was the only boy up there that spoke English. And he took me around to all of the Lakshmi shrines to see them when he found out I was interested in seeing the shrines, and would introduce me to the parents and everything. But all the little kids in the village would follow, not all of them, a huge group would follow behind. And I just held my hands out to my side, and so sweetly, one of the great joys of my life, one little child would hold my left hand, one little child would hold my right hand, and, you know, lead me around the village. When they had to leave and go home, believe me, there were 10 other children waiting to take their place to hold my hand. But just the sweetness of the children, I always definitely will remember. And long as I'm talking about the little boy who spoke English, I called him young Gopal, a name for young Krishna. He saw me one day with my Swiss Army knife, and he asked me, could he have it? Boy, I was probably too hard on him. I really let him have it and told him absolutely not, and he shouldn't be a beggar. Anyway, I mentioned it to my host, and he told his mother. And his mother called the little boy over. My host told me this several days later. She called young Gopal over and told young Gopal he must never ask for things of this world. Okay. Another story, I just thought of this one this morning. I talk whole hour on devotion, but I'm so glad I thought of it. This was in Bangalore, in US, we may know it as Bangalore, in state of Karnataka. And I was in one of the old temples there, the Bull Temple it's called, and huge carving of a bull. And is a woman praying devotionally at one of the side altars to one of the deities. All the Indian temples have beautiful carvings of representing the deities, the aspects of unmanifested God that cannot be put in form. And I noticed her little boys tugging on her sari, and won't leave her alone as she's doing her devotions. And I thought, this is a very, very naughty boy. And so I was watching out of the corner of my eye to see how this plays out. Mother keeps praying. Little boy's 3-4 years old, tugging. Finally, boy wins out. Mother can't ignore him any longer, picks him up. He wanted to see the deities while he's tugging on mom's sari. She picked him up, held him near the deity, the statue, the carving. Guess what he did? Leaned over and kissed it. Okay. So I had a Indian doctor in Gujarat, a Dr. Patel, explained to me scientifically why Indians are so devotional. You may not believe his explanation. I believe his explanation. He's telling me when the mother's pregnant and carrying the baby in her womb, the mother's praying to God, the father's praying to God, and when the baby is born, devotion is part of his natural makeup. And if you don't believe that, a book I read a long time ago, I'd recommend for everybody, is called The Secret Life of the Unborn Child. And I think today, read a good book on embryology if you want to see the effect that our outer environment has on the child in the womb. In fact, it's even said, Shankara, the first Adi Shankara, the first of the Shankaras who started the Swami order, and he was born highly advanced. It said his father instructed him in his mother's womb through the subconscious mind of his mother. But anyway, those are some devotional stories that I wanted to share.
Thank you so much. You have so many stories up your sleeve. So I guess, what were your impressions of Indian culture, devotion aside, and their peacefulness, and in terms of their personality? You must have seen a lot of practices, and how did you perceive them? Can you tell us a little bit about that, please?
Sure. And what impressed me the most, several things, but far and away, to me, what sets India apart from every other country in the world is the concept principle of Dharma, which, of course, major principle of the Hindu religion. And I'm not going to try to define it. Lofty, we need Balabhandraji to do that. But lofty meanings of Dharma. But I want to speak of it just as it reflects in our own life. And I'm going to simplify it down: righteous action. Just do what is right. And the wonderful example of that, in fact, little boy taught me Dharma. First trip to India, I didn't know what it meant, other than intellectually, maybe a little. And I'd gone to Mount Abu to see that's in Western India, northwestern India, see the famous Jain temples. And I'd bought some postcards. I must have dropped my wallet. A few minutes later, tap on my shoulder, I turn around, a little 10, 11-year-old, 9 to 10-year-old boy. In his outstretched hand is my wallet. And boy, I was glad to get it back because it had a lot of money in it and identification. And when he gave it back, I was so pleased. An American sent, naturally, what's the first thing to do? Reward him. So, ugly Americans. So I pulled out some money. I offered him, I can't remember, 5 or 10 rupees. I had a lot of money in the billfold, and he wouldn't accept. And I thought he didn't understand. I tried to put it in his hand. He puts his hands behind his back. Tried to put the money in his hands behind his back. He puts his hands in his pocket. Finally, I figured he doesn't get it, okay? Doesn't get it, not the money. He doesn't get why I want to give him the money. I stopped the man coming by who did speak English, explained to the boy in his language why I wanted to reward him for his act, noble act of returning my wallet. And they talked for 2 or 3 minutes. And I thought, what in the world? The man doesn't even understand what's going on here. Finally, the man explains to me, the boy wants to be sure I understand that it doesn't make any sense to him, and the boy doesn't think I should pay him to give back to me what is mine by doing what's right. So Dharma. And the ultimate Dharma story I just got to tell, since we're talking about Dharma, which isn't my own, it's better than my story. It's Arjun's story from the Mahabharata, and everybody knows this in India. Every kid from 5 or 6 years old would certainly know this by heart. But as a war is getting ready to take place, and it seems it can't be averted, and Arjun's lining up his forces, and evil ruler Duryodhan's lining up his allies, so that Duryodhan goes to Krishna to try to get Krishna's to support him with his large armies. And Krishna pretends to be sleeping. Duryodhan sits at his head so that Krishna can't miss him when he wakes up. Coincidentally, Arjun comes in at the same time, sits humbly at his feet. And when Krishna does wake up, or pretends to wake up, he looks at Krishna, and I won't go into the whole story, but both of you are my kin, and I, want to be fair. And but I saw Arjun first, he gets first choice, and Duryodhan didn't like that, but nothing he could do about it. So Krishna said, here are the 2 choices. You can have my mighty armies, or you can have me as your advisor, charioteer. I will not fight. I will not lift arms, bear arms, but that's the choice. And again, Duridan wanted first choice so he could get the armies. And so Arjun, which he assumed from his own mentality, that's who Arjun was going to take the armies also. Anyway, Arjun, without hesitation, said, "Oh Lord, I want you." And because Arjun knew that where there is Krishna, there is Dharma. And where there is Dharma, there will be victory. And I hope all of us adults as well can remember that in this crazy mixed up world we're living in now. Where there is Dharma, there will be victory. So it was a tough war, as you know, tough fight, but Dharma did end up prevailing. The other, for me, as a traveler, a tourist, if you like, traveling around India, the trait that, boy, I really noticed, couldn't overlook, couldn't miss, is hospitality. And from Columbus, Georgia, we pride ourselves in the South in Southern hospitality. And I really do believe, having traveled a lot around the US, there is a Southern hospitality that is reflected often more than in other regions of the country. Indian hospitality made Southern US hospitality, by comparison, pale nothing. Now, this next statement is going to seem unbelievable. Perhaps it's unbelievable to me even today. I went to first trip to India. I didn't know a lot of people. I knew one person, and I had the name of one other person to contact. You know how many nights I stayed in a hotel my first month in India? 3, only 3, and that was at Ajanta Ellora Caves tourist sites. And the rest of the time I could be in an office, a tourist agency, walking down the street, a restaurant. And when Indians found out I had a sincere interest in their culture and religion, they'd say, "Oh, come stay with us. You don't want to stay in a hotel. You're going to be lonely. Food won't be as good." And as I say, just through, call it chance, karma, whatever, first month in India, only 3 nights did I stay in a hotel. One of the ways India, in fact, staying in those homes, in fact, the concept, the guest is God, goes back to the ancient Indian scripture, Upanishads. And one of the way they treat the guest as God is, if God were there, serving food. Okay, gee whiz. And I love eating and I love Indian food, but you need 2 or 3 stomachs to eat all of the food that they served you. And I couldn't get them to quit serving me. Finally, I figured out only way I could prevent it. You know, I'd lean my torso forward over the plate where they couldn't put any more food on the plate. Only way I could prevent being served more food. But my host was smarter than I was. And if they wanted me to have more food, I remember one of my hosts said, "Oh, but I would like some more, and I can't eat unless you eat." So it was a no-win situation for me. But again, the hospitality was literally, absolutely incredible. And mentioning too, in fact, spirituality, devotion, hospitality, home I stayed in is Gujarat. The doctor I mentioned, Dr. Patel, and he meant this. We became good friends. He said, if it's very non-material culture in India, as I mentioned, you admire something, it's given to you. Don't admire it. So he said to me one day, and again, he really meant it, if it was anything I wanted in his house, I could have it. But he said, I didn't even have to ask. Okay. Two, in terms of guests being God, often I would take, when I'm leaving a city, I would take a very earliest buses I could get in the morning, so that when I got to my next destination, I'd still have plenty of time to photograph. I could be leaving at 5, 6 in the morning, 7 in the morning. My hostess always insisted on fixing a nice breakfast for me, even though I said, absolutely not, don't get up. They insisted, but not only did they get up, fix me a nice breakfast. American, if we got teens watching Sando, they're not gonna like this one. They made sure the children were up too and dressed properly to say goodbye to uncle. And I love the way in Indian families, the elders, older people are referred to as uncle and auntie, making you a part of the family, not just people. In fact, one home I was in, I just happened to have met the guy. I was in an office building, went to see someone wanted me to meet. The guy wasn't there, and just a young associate took me to a tea stall. We became friends, and I spent a lot of time, it turned out, staying with him and his family. One day we were talking in his home, mother, father, and his younger sister. And sister was probably 14, 15. He could have been 22. He referred to me as uncle. As soon as he said, addressed me as uncle, his sister immediately blurted out, brother. And I'm going to tell you, things like that really touch your heart when you have that kind of, love and devotion from people who, not part of your own family, who you hadn't even known for, that long a time.
Bob G, may I interrupt to ask a question while you tell these stories? As a foreigner visiting India, how easy was it? Did you experience the language barrier a lot, or was English pretty easy to communicate? Was there always somebody in these families that could explain to their elders who didn't speak the language? Just how did you experience the language barrier, and how did you overcome it?
Okay, language in India, there is no language barrier. It'd be the European equivalent of Italy, speaking with your hands, right? And but because of the past British time in India, colonial past, English being pretty much universal business language today. Most people, at least, in cities, did speak English. In fact, the schools would teach at least 3 languages, the language of that particular state, English and Hindi. Some taught Sanskrit too. So English was very widely known, but sometimes in rural areas it could be a problem. And I remember I only had one consternation a few times, on trains in rural areas or buses, to make sure I got off at the right destination. But other than that, it really wasn't a problem. In fact, it was just the opposite was the problem. Being a foreigner, the guest is God. Indians love to help people so much that sometimes it almost becomes a problem. But I was, in fact, it was in Mumbai, my first trip to India. I'd ventured out downtown for the first time. I had directions how to get back. Went to the railroad station, Victoria Terminus, big, huge station. Anyway, my train was pulling out, and I ran and jumped on the train on the in first car I could get to. Again, train's moving at this point. It was a little like half car behind the engine. I didn't know, as I say, my first trip. Turned out this was a little carriage for porters transporting goods, boxes, all that stuff. Boy, it was packed. So anyway, I'm on trains going. So that was my, that's where I was. So one of the porters very nicely got up and offered me a seat, which I took. He climbs up, lays down on the luggage rack over me, but not just that, he's constantly bending over, peering at me. And for those of you who've been to India, Indians have a lot of curiosity, inquisitiveness. And anyway, what I'd like to mention, the language barrier. The guy I'm sitting next to on a cart for porters gives me a discourse on the insufficiencies of the English language to properly translate Sanskrit. Okay, that's in a porter's carriage. Anyway, I had to transfer trains and didn't know where. I asked somebody, did they know I was staying Villa Parley West if you're from Mumbai? Did anybody know where I transfer? And some guy said, yes, you change it Dada. And he said, oh, I'm getting out there too. I'll see that you get to your platform. He assisted me to my platform, which I thought was very nice to get my train on. But then he gave me some sage advice, and this comes back, Anjali, to the question you've posed about language barrier. He said to me, again, Indians so eager to help. I'm not sure, I don't think I ever had one tell me, I don't know. He said to me, if ever you ask Indian for directions, always ask a second Indian to be sure that the directions given to you by the first Indian was correct, okay? So I didn't have any trouble with language and information. Sometimes the trouble was getting too much. So anyway, those could go on and on and on the hospitality and guest is God, but I guess we should move on perhaps.
Well, Bobji, that's you're bringing back so many memories for me about my trips to India. Wow. So you were actually bringing to life the culture by the way you're speaking, and I really appreciate that. So I would like to hear you discuss a little bit about the concept of the innate spirituality of the Indian culture, the people, so on and so forth, because it's what drives them, as far as I can understand, is that, as you said, guest is God, those concepts from the Vedic literatures. So could you talk a little bit about the innate spirituality of the Indian culture?
Oh, absolutely. And this first story will tell it all. And this was took place in that same little village north of Kolkata, up in West Bengal, Sala. You remember I mentioned young Gopal, the little boy who won a Swiss Army knife. Anyway, he and I became really, really, really good friends. When I was getting ready to leave, I'd stayed up there at least 2 or 3 days with my host, the luggage repairman at his mother's home. When I was getting ready to leave, I was telling young Gopal goodbye, and I bent down and touched his feet. Boy, did he get upset. Did he get upset? And said to me, I mustn't do that. He's only, I remember the exact words, a little one. And in India, I mean, I knew this, an adult doesn't touch a child's feet. They touch their parents' feet, a teacher or a priest, to show respect. But I saw this as an excellent opportunity to teach him a wonderful lesson that I would like for him to learn. So I pretended to be disappointed, and I'm going to use the same tone of voice now narrating the story that the way I talked to young Gopal. I said, young Gopal, don't you understand I'm not touching your feet? I'm touching Krishna's feet in you. Well, didn't understand what you were talking about earlier, Balabandra, before we started, that God's in everybody. And anyway, when I said I'm touching Krishna's feet in him, not his feet, he sat there and he thought, and he thought, and he thought, and I let him think. And he sat there for at least a minute, maybe more, looked at me and said, "Krishna's in everyone." I was so proud of him, so proud of him. That little boy, innate spirituality, that little boy understood an advanced philosophical concept of the Trinity, if you like, that the Krishna consciousness, the Christ consciousness, the Buddha consciousness, spirit's intelligence in the physical world in a passive way is in everyone. The soul, the light of God is in everyone's soul. So many interpretations. Look at it however you want to look at it. That little boy understood innately deeper philosophical concepts, not trying to put down any culture over any culture or elevate any culture over any culture. But theology at the moment doesn't seem to me, at least, to be overly evolved in the West. And that little 7, 8-year-old boy with a just rural school had a greater philosophical understanding than I'd say many leading theologians in the Western world. So
Wow.
that really does, I think, tell the story. And I might mention, because it's the exact same theme, I have a very practical mind. To go to India, my first trip, 6 months, I had to have a reason to go other than see what is this India, which is why I went. Who are these people who, through the millennia, have developed in the mind a science of yoga, how to unite the soul with unmanifested spirit. We have a lot of great traits in the West, but that, inner reflection is not one of them. But anyway, I, in my mind, decided I want to do some humanitarian work. And I was going to go to Mother Teresa's, who was alive at that time, ashram, and work at the home for the dying and the destitute. That's what intellectually took me to India. So I went over one morning to, see if I could volunteer there, and they did allow me to, and so forth. And that too was a great experience, but I won't go into. But written on the wall was something by Mother Teresa that young Gopal had already figured out. And on the wall, she had written, "Do the work for Christ." And if you're a Hindu, just think Krishna. Do the work for Christ, through Christ, to Christ. So it's easy enough to do the work for God, or Krishna, or Christ, isn't it? Through Christ, well, how do we do that? Well, a lot of interpretations, maybe through the, anyway, I'll let you come up with your own interpretation on that. So many, without God's energy manifesting through us, we couldn't do anything. Okay, anyway, whatever spin you want to put on that, do your work through Krishna or Christ, to Krishna or Christ, seeing Christ or Krishna in everyone. And young Gopal had figured that out. I also thought, boy, wasn't that a beautiful principle for Sister Teresa to be teaching her young nuns. And I might mention I went the night before. I wondered if she was still, would she be there? I went to a Catholic prayer session, Vespers. I sensed she wasn't there. I got there late, 30, 40 nuns kneeling on a hard stone floor on their knees. I tried that, so painful for my knees. I chose a more painful part of my body to sit on, my rear end, a more, I should say, padded section. And just at the end of the prayer session, I felt a force go through my body. If you've ever seen Star Wars movies, Luke, let the force be with you, a force went through me. And I knew right away what it was through just, again, God's grace, intuition. Mother Teresa's arrived. I turned around, looked behind me, hear this little frail woman's hobbling up to put some sacrament away. But she was giving the nuns what? A darshan, opportunity to see her. And from that, I just realized, and not limited to Mother Teresa, all of us, anyone she comes in contact with, anyone comes in contact with, he'll lift it up, or the case may be, lowered based on one's own vibration. But she had such a powerful vibration, I have no doubt, just being in her presence devotionally, probably people did receive spiritual healing. So anyway, young Gopal, that Krishna's in everyone, I'll give you that as the supreme example of innate spirituality. And could tell many stories, but I'm gonna end it on that one because time is we don't have all day. You don't.
No, that was beautiful. It reminded me of what I taught my young granddaughter. She's like 6 years old, young African-American kid. And I taught her the principle of namaste. And the spirit in me respects the spirit in you. So we call it our secret word. So whenever I talk to her, I said, Ava, what's the secret word? Namaste, Grandpa. The spirit in me respects the spirit in you. So the point is, it's not difficult to teach spirituality even to our children. And that's part of our Hindu Vedic culture. Kamara achare pragya. Kamara means small like a child. So it begins with the children. So I'm happy to see that we do have some youth on our call today. So given the fact that our time may be a little short, but before we open it up for a few questions, I did want to hear from you a little bit about your experience with Kumbha Mela, because that's a very, very important part of the Hindu culture, this Kumbha Mela.
Oh, for me, the Kumbha Mela was a turning point in one respect of my travels in India. It showed me the heart and soul of the Indian people collectively. I'd seen it on an individual basis, and I've narrated some stories. But as I mentioned, the day I arrived, 20 million people in a 24-hour period. And in fact, again, sweetness of the people. I'd forgotten to take the plot location of my yoga organization where I was going to stay. Couldn't find the place. Finally found a policeman, asked him, did he know where Yoga Satsanga Society's plot is? Oh yeah, he knew. He took me by the hand so sweetly and led me there, like I'm a little child. But it's so many people. But one of the, for me, wonderful experiences I had there, that you can imagine 20 million people, the noise. And I'm sharing with you what I love about India. If somebody's going to say, isn't it anything you didn't like about India? Of course, a lot of things I didn't like about India, but in the world of duality, you've got mixed, good and bad. So I try to look at the good. Anyway, what I didn't like about India, anyone's been there, man, the noise. They play radios a little loud, don't they? Blow the horns a little too much, don't they? Anyway, the camp right across from the one where my yoga organization where I was staying, they played a loudspeaker so high. I mean, it's ear-shattering. And an American there complained to an Indian whom I knew and was standing there. Indian said to him, if you knew what they were saying, you would not complain. At that moment, I had a mind shift. And I can't tell you what a joy it was to wake up in the morning, 4:30 in the morning. And for telling you that story, I woke up at 4:30 and heard all that noise. From that point on, I never heard noise again. I heard collective devotional prayer as each person prayed to God or spirit or how they understood God in the way they best could or understood. And it was, I mean, you hear just a drone of prayer coming from acres, miles and miles and miles. It's really, really, really touching, but I've shared this story very, very few people, Kumbha Mela, but anybody's joined us, you get this story as a result of Balabhandraji's devotion and sincerely wanting to know what I thought of the Kumbha Mela. I had a spiritual experience there. I'm going to share with you. We are told don't share your spiritual experiences with others. They are personal. They're meant for you. Oh yeah, Jesus, don't cast your pearls to the swine, so they'll turn upon and rend you. The multitudes aren't going to understand. And anyway, if it were meant for you, you'll have your own. Anyway, I mentioned I was there at the most auspicious time in the last 144 years. And particularly astrologically, those hours were from 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. in the morning, okay? So to take a dip, a ritual dip into the rivers, believed to wash away your sins, so forth, help uplift you spiritually. So 2 Indians came to me in our yoga organization, asked me would I like to go with them at 2 o'clock in the morning, take a dip in the Ganges. And I might mention a cold spell had come in from the Himalayas, coldest weather had been in 70 years. And I noticed Indians lying out I was in a tent, bought an extra blanket, lying out just on that cold ground with a little cotton shawl over them in that cold, cold night. Devotion, okay, devotion. They seem to have survived well. Anyway, okay, we're going at 2 a.m. in the morning to take a dip in the Ganges, the most sacred place where the Ganges and Yamuna join together, the Sangam. And it's believed and not believed, several thousand years ago, the ancient Saraswati River joined there also, that's since dried up and gone underground with climate change and tectonic shifts. Anyway, we went to the Sangam. They went in first, and I watched their clothing while they went in. They came back, and I shed down to my bathing suit and went in, took my dip, submerged, said a prayer, got out, got dressed. As we were walking back to the camp, as tens of thousands of people in processions going to the Sangam, returning from the Sangam. Anyway, I said to one of them, and I've had frostbite too, by the way. My body cannot withstand extreme cold weather. Anyway, I said to him, I didn't find the water cold. What about you guys? And they said, and they hadn't said anything. He said, we didn't either. Okay. So I can't tell you it was like taking a heated bath. Water wasn't cold. I don't know whether to describe it lukewarm, it just wasn't cold. So you put your own take on that. My psychosomatic derangement, as you may have already deduced. But anyway, that morning, our yoga organization had an organized dip in the river. So we went about 8 or 9 in the morning, the sun's up, we all go nice and organized and everything. And as soon as I got in the water, it was freezing, so cold, so cold. My body could not withstand it. I just said a quick prayer and jumped out. And for me, that was my testimonial, if my mind, intellect needed one, that as far as I know, that for everyone who had the faith and devotion to go take a dip in the river at that auspicious time of 2 to 4 a.m., Divine Mother, in other words, made that river warm for everybody. And even though I sometimes think I'm God's favorite, we're all God's favorite, and Divine Mother did that for everyone. So those are some Kumbha Mela experiences, and this was, of course, well before COVID. Nobody even knew what COVID was. COVID may change things going forward. If you ever get a chance, go to a Kumbha Mela. If you're in India, I had people say to me in India, oh, you didn't go to that thing, did you? I wouldn't go. Well, each to his own. But if you ever get a chance to go to Kumbha Mela, by all means do it and take a dip in the Sangam.
Thank you. That was so beautiful, Bob. Unfortunately, our time has expired. It's like we're just transported on this wonderful journey with you. And we'll have to have you come back and we can have some questions and interactions. I hope everyone got a chance to see your book. Can you see that? It's a beautiful, beautiful book. And
okay, we got another beautiful book here and showing you.
That one, I love that book. That's
Unveiled.
So I'm going to ask you, Bob, if you don't mind, you can close us out with some final thoughts, and then we'll end like that.
Well, yeah, I had a lofty combine the best of East and West, especially if we've got any teens watching. Yeah, and it is a real blessing to live in our materially efficient democracy that we're getting straightened out. And with Indian spirituality, to me, that's the best of both worlds. What I'd like to close it out with, I was in Gujarat, Western India, Northwest, and someone took me to a little village and asked me villagers wanted me to speak to them. I gave them a little talk. Anyway, when I was finished, none of these people had ever left the village. None of them had more than just a few basic grades of education. And something I think God prompted me. I asked, does anyone want me to share anything with Americans? To my amazement, this shows my meanness of the human heart, vanity, hubris. A guy raises his hand, and I thought, I'm just being honest, what in the world could this guy who's uneducated want me to share with Americans? So I'm going to share it. This will be my conclusion. What he asked me to tell Americans, that if you will do your work in the spirit of service to God, it will help you to loosen the grip of the ego. So parting words, namaste.
Thank you so much, Bob. That was so beautiful. And thank you all on behalf of the Vedic Friends Association. I thank you all for attending this morning, and please visit our website, vedicfriendsassociation.org, and Bob's presentation will be hosted there as well. So thank you all. Hope to see you all in the future. Namaste, Hare Krishna.
Namaste.